Okay, in terms of the stuff, deadlines for me change of file. So exam 1 and quiz and assignments part 2, deadline not this Friday, but next Friday, March 1st. Then exam 2, quiz and assignments part 3 on April 5th. Then exam 3, exam 4, quiz and assignments part 5, April 26th. And the final deadline's on Wednesday, finals week at 5 p.m. Before going on to our new and exciting fallacies, anything about any previous stuff to be, or stuff that needs more stuff. Okay, so last time we were looking at fallacies, and we saw essentially what fallacies all have in common, what your defining trait is that they are a type of argument, because they offer evidence or reasons in support of a conclusion. What makes a fallacy is not that the premises are untrue or the conclusion is untrue, because, as I noted before, you could have a fallacy in which everything is true. So if someone commits a fallacy, you can't logically infer their conclusion must be false. It could be true. As I mentioned before, although the book doesn't mention it, there's the fallacy, which occurs when someone says, aha, the fallacy has been committed, therefore the conclusion must be false, which ironically is a fallacy. Now, with the emotion-based fallacies, what defines them is all you got is, instead of evidence, is an emotion. So that is feel fear, anger, pride, pity, therefore the claim is true. We also saw some of the complications there, namely, just because we might feel anger, fear, pity, etc., it doesn't mean that the evidence is disqualified. So if something does make you angry, it doesn't mean that you can't actually use it as evidence, because it could make you angry. That's irrelevant to logic, but it also doesn't disqualify it. Likewise, there are things that may look kind of like the fallacy, like someone expressing anger or praising someone, but if they're not making an attempt at an argument, not a fallacy. So if someone just says, gosh, I feel really sorry for people who don't have health care, that is talking about pity, but it's not an appeal to pity, because there's no attempt to support a claim. Now we turn to the second family, or the first family of non-emotion-based fallacies. Last time we saw the smoke screen, which is basically just puffing out smoke until one's opponent is lost in the visual smoke. There's also the classic red herring, which is essentially a diversionary tactic. Whenever you see politicians, celebrities, or anybody being interviewed, and they'd rather not stick to the issue, they'll typically red herring. They'll go off into something else. So if you have, I'll give you this example of the president. If someone brings up the Russia investigation, they might bring up Hillary Clinton and her emails. And there are still, apparent questions about the legality of the email thing, but of course, her emails doesn't say anything or prove anything about the Russian investigation. There's no connection. Likewise, if you have someone who's a Democrat, and someone's, talking about a failing Democratic Party, bringing up something about Trump doesn't disprove anything. It just switches the issue. We now turn to yet another classic fallacy, which has many names. The authors of the book call it argument from popularity. It's sometimes called appeal to popularity. In Latin, the ad populum, and probably more commonly known as appeal to belief. And as I mentioned on many occasions, there's no international standard of fallacy naming, so if you go to Wikipedia or many of the fine books on fallacies, you might see different names. And that's just because no one's in charge of this stuff. Now, the formula for this fallacy, and it is an argument, so it's got structure, is basically this. The first premise is that, in sort of the most blatant form, is that everyone believes X. Now you could substitute in like most or lots. It's some percentage of people. And typically some will say everyone believes. Or people may say most people believe. Then the conclusion is, therefore X is true. Now in this case, there's no emotion-based appeal. It's not that the person is trying to invoke anger, fear, or pity. The idea is simply that people tend to think that if most people believe something, then it's probably true. Now, why is this a fallacy? Well, the reason why it's a fallacy is because, with two exceptions, the fact that everyone believes something, even if that is true, it doesn't follow that it must be true, or is even likely to be true. So, typical examples will be things like this. Someone may say, everyone believes that small class sizes is the key to good education, therefore it's true. Now, it may actually be true. Maybe small class sizes are important to good education, but simply saying everyone believes it doesn't prove it's true. Or another example, if someone says everyone believes in God, therefore God exists. There are good arguments for God's existence. Leibniz, Descartes, Locke, and St. Thomas Aquinas, all have good arguments, but that's not one of them. The fact that everyone believes it, even if it were true, doesn't prove it. So, it's easy to build examples of these because all you have to do is just take some claim, say everyone believes it, therefore it's true. Now again, the reason why it works psychologically is that people tend to think that if a lot of people believe something, then it's probably true. Now, what fuels this is there actually are two scenarios, or two cases in which this isn't bad reasoning. So this is not always a fallacy. Now, the appeal to belief, if that's all there is, fallacy. But there are two versions of this that are good logic, and we'll see those. Now, in terms of how this differs from peer pressure and groupthink, here's the difference. With peer pressure, the reasoning is, if I don't believe this, I'll be rejected by my group, so it's true. In the case of groupthink, it's, I feel pride in my group, therefore I accept this claim because of my membership. In this case, it's not appealing to a threat of rejection, nor is it appealing to pride. It's just appealing to everyone believes it. So the hallmark of this fallacy, the way to spot it is, there's a reference to everyone, most, lots of people believe it. And that's the way to spot it. But as I noted, there are two exceptions, which mess things up. First thing is this. There are cases, scenarios, situations, where majority belief does in fact make something true. So in a way, there'd be sort of a hidden premise or implicit premise here, like secret premise 2, whereas belief makes it true. So in that case, it would be good logic. If everyone believes X and belief makes it true, then it is true. For example, language is all belief-based. Why wasn't ain't a word and now it is a word? Well, it's not like being a word is like a magical thing in which it's clearly a word or clearly not. It's basically everyone accepts it. So now ain't is officially a word because everyone finally said, okay, we all use it. So it's a word now. It is a word. It is a word, officially a word now. And so it's just a matter of belief. Similarly, in the case of manners and etiquette, whatever people believe is polite makes it polite. So, for example, if someone's at a restaurant and they're eating a hamburger and french fries with their hands, perfectly polite. If they start eating like a stick of butter with their hands, or scooping up spaghetti or soup with their hands, we consider that rude. Now, there's some practical factors there. Soup would be hard to eat with your hands, and eating butter, a whole stick of butter, would be kind of weird. But it's just based on belief. If for some reason our culture accepted hand soup as a thing, it would be perfectly polite. It would be a thing you do at a restaurant. I'd like a bowl of hand soup, please. And scoop up your soup. That could be a thing someday. So another example, more substantial, is the current legal definition of pornography. And the definition is not, you may think, well, surely they've got some sort of like code, statutes and stuff that clearly define it to avoid problems. But the legal definition is what? So if someone gets charged with, pornography stuff, how do they decide if that's really that?
Get charged with what?
Oh, pornography stuff, in the 5th degree. I just made that
How
up.
do they?
Yeah, what's the definition? What's a legal definition? Like,
I know for a fact, like, I was watching the Supreme Court has already had a definition of pornography exactly, but you know when you see it.
they do know when they see it, and I guess that means they see a lot of it, because they know it so well. Yeah, so the idea is basically community standards.
Right.
So the idea is that whatever the community accepts, whatever they believe is pornography, is pornography. And, in some cases, not a big deal if you're just talking about, what people are doing, but if it's a legal case, if they're charging someone with distributing pornography, which used to be probably a crime still in some places, it's kind of weird to just say, well, if the jury kind of thinks it's pornographic, it is. So it all depends on who is in the jury, would make it very subjective. And so there are many things, like language, that belief makes it true. So if there is a case where belief makes it true, then it wouldn't be bad logic. Now, what can make it complicated is there are philosophical and legal disputes about belief making stuff true. So, for example, even though the legal standard is belief makes something pornography, someone could argue, well, that's absurd. We don't say that murder is whatever people believe is murder. We define it. Similarly, in the case of like language, someone may argue, well, it's not belief that makes words mean things. It's some other function of language, etc. And so you can have debates about whether belief makes it true. To give two substantial examples, ethics and art. Now, one view, as we saw in the ancient days at the beginning of the class, one view is that morality is in the eye of the beholder. So if you believe something's bad or evil, it is. If you don't, it's not. And that's a substantial debate. So if someone says everyone believes murder is wrong, believing murder is wrong makes it wrong, therefore it's wrong. Well, in a way, whether that's a fallacy or not depends on whether morality is subjective like this. And that becomes, philosophically complicated. Another example is in the case of art. There is, of course, the saying that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, which means that if you believe it's beautiful in a way, it is. And so if you accepted that view, if everyone believes something is beautiful and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, then it would be true. And that becomes a matter of substantial debate. Now, since that's a matter of philosophical controversy, those won't be things on the exam or quizzes. I want a question like, suppose everyone believes the Mona Lisa is beautiful, therefore it is this the fallacy or not? Because the answer could be yeah or no. So there's really there's no right or wrong answer at this point. We don't know. So the examples will be like clear cases, like everyone believes that building the walls is a terrible idea, therefore it is. And that would be this fallacy, because there's no, belief doesn't make that true. Second category is belief doesn't make something true, but it indicates truth. And this is, the authors of the book don't mention this, but this is what's called an argument from authority. The idea is, in this case, that if everyone believes it, and it's a case where belief indicates it's true, being true, that is to say, those believing are experts or authorities, then it would probably be true. It's inductive reasoning. So if everyone believes it and belief indicates true, then it's, well, it's probably put in a probably there. It's probably true, because that's inductive logic. Examples that include the following. If you have things that, a scenario where you're, dealing with a person or a group, and you have reason to think that they know, and reason to think that they're not lying, then you can probably accept it. For example, suppose this summer you decide to visit the great state of Maine, and go to Acadia National Park. And you're wondering, does the park close at sunset like parks in Florida? And you talk to some people and they say, oh yeah, we come here all the time. Yeah, the park does close at sunset, unless of course you have a camping pass, then yeah, obviously you can stay past sunset. Now in that case, unless you think these people are up to something, or are deceptive, like they're from Canada or something, then nothing is, sorry, shouldn't be mean to Canadians. Everyone believes it, in this case, indicates that it's probably true, because you have no reason to think that people are saying something untrue, that they're deceiving you. So, it's probably true. Could they be lying? Could they be clever deceivers trying to trick you? Well, yeah, that's possible, but it's probably true. As another example, suppose you forget when exam 1 is due, and you ask everyone in the class, and everyone in the class says, oh yeah, the deadline for that is March 1st, and you don't think they're trying to trick you or betray you, then you can probably believe it, because they probably know, and they probably have no reason to lie. So cases where belief indicates truth, then wouldn't be the fallacy. Now, as you might imagine, there are cases of debate about, does belief indicate truth? But in the examples that will show up on a quiz or a test would be pretty clear examples like that one. Like suppose you're in a park and people who seem to be honest and know what they're talking about say they believe the park closes at sunset, and you believe them. Have you fallen prey to fallacy? And the answer would be probably not, because in that case they're probably honest. Now again, they could be lying. It could be a case of deceit, but it wouldn't be bad logic. To believe people who seem trustworthy and probably know and have nothing to gain from lying wouldn't be bad logic. Yeah, you could be wrong, but it's not bad logic. So those are two exceptions. Belief determines truth, belief indicates truth. So the way to sort those out is to ask essentially 3 questions. Question 1, is it a case where it's just everyone believes X, so it's supposed to be true, and that's it, that's all they got? In that case, fallacy. Is it a case where everyone believes X, or most, and belief makes it true, then not a fallacy. If it's a case where everyone believes X, and belief indicates truth, not a fallacy. Now again, even the cases that are not a fallacy, it could turn out to be not true, because people can be wrong about what they think is true. Now, a variation on this is a targeted version. As I mentioned before, with many of the fallacies, the usual sort of technique is to target the audience as best as possible. So, the targeted variation is to replace everyone believes X with a particular group. And ideally, of course, it's supposed to be a group the target identifies with. So roughly it's saying, your group believes X, X is true. Now, of course, to make this work, you've got to know the group. And this, of course, can be easily done if you're speaking to an audience that you know. So, for example, if you're a politician speaking to the NRA, you know they tend to believe in gun rights. Or if you're sending out a mailing to members of the teachers union, the NEA, UFF, etc., then you know that they're probably a teacher. It'd be kind of weird for someone to join a teaching union and pay all the dues, but not be a teacher. Not impossible, but unlikely. Now, this is still a fallacy, because even if it's true that your group believes X, it doesn't follow that X is true. For example, when Hillary Clinton was running for president, I remember getting mailers from union stuff, and it basically said, we believe that Hillary Clinton is the best choice. And the idea, of course, is that it's supposed to be true, so I'm supposed to vote Hillary. Now, even if the teachers union says that Hillary is a good, great choice, does it follow that that's true? No, that merely the fact, even if it's true they believe it, doesn't follow. You need reasons. Now, if they give reasons, they say the union believes that she's the best choice because they show all positions in education, then you'd say, yeah, those are reasons. Another example, if I get a mailing from the NRA and it says gun owners believe that background checks are a terrible idea, therefore they're terrible, again, that doesn't follow. Now the psychology is you're supposed to believe it because, well, your group does. So you should accept what your group says. In this case, it's not appealing to necessarily to pride or fear. It's just, well, my group believes this, I should too. But of course, logically, that doesn't follow. Okay, so on the side of evil, pretty easy to use. The general version is just essentially say, everyone believes this, therefore it's true. For the targeted version, just say, you know, your audience's group, you know, teachers believe this, union members believe this, Democrats believe this, Republicans believe this, all red-blooded Americans believe this, and then present the claim. The defense is also pretty straightforward. Again, with the standard of appeal to popularity, there's those three questions, and the same apply here. You just ask those three questions. Before pressing on, anything about that needs more stuff? Also, I want to apologize to the Canadians. That was mean. Well, Maine and Canada, we have some we had a war a while back, so still haven't forgotten that. True, there was a war. We fought Canada one time. We tried to capture it. Didn't work out. Maybe next time. I've said too much.
Exactly.
Anything else? Now, a closely related sibling of the appeal to belief is the argument from common practice, also called appeal to common practice, also just called common practice. And it looks very similar, with one slight variation. Instead of appealing to belief, it appeals to, shockingly enough, practice, namely actions. So instead of everyone believes this, it's that everyone or most or lots or your group or whatever does X. So X is true, good, or right. So psychologically, the idea essentially is, well, everyone's doing it, so it's okay. Or alternatively, everyone's doing it, so yeah, I guess I should be doing that too. So how is this different from an argument from popularity? Well, one reason why I like the name appeal to belief and appeal to common practice, those names, is because the name gives it away. Appeal to belief is belief, what people think. Appeal to common practice is appealing to people's practice. The practice is common, therefore it's okay. Now the reason why it's a fallacy is because even if it were true that lots of people, or even if everyone was doing it, it doesn't make it good or right. So that would be a fallacy. What would be some examples? Oh, they're easy to build. You just say most or lots of people do this, therefore it's okay. For example, someone could be at their office, loading up, you know, supplies into their backpack, thinking, well, maybe it's wrong of me to take these staplers and printers and computers, company vehicles. But if they say to themselves, oh, everyone does it, everyone takes a few office supplies now and then, it's an appeal to common practice. Everyone does it, it's common, so it's okay. But it need not be okay, just because it's commonly done. Similarly, it's often used, again, in sort of like not super serious cases. So, for example, the classic thing of if you have you're at a workplace and there's like a common refrigerator, statistically someone's going to steal your lunch. And people often justify that, well, everyone takes someone's lunch once in a while, and that's not a super big deal except you miss your lunch. But people do use this in very serious circumstances. For example, a while back I heard a person being interviewed about how in business they tended to pay women less. And a person just said, well, this is just commonly done. And that was their justification. They were essentially saying, well, pretty much everyone pays women less than men, so it's okay.
It's not okay.
Yeah, but it's not okay. Yeah, just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean it's okay. Now, psychologically, of course, it can be effective because if we think, well, on one hand, if everyone's doing it, then maybe that like makes it okay. Or the idea is, well, why should I be the one not doing it? And the variation of this is when people say, well, if I don't do it, someone else will. I mean, something bad. Like if we don't sell, missiles to the Saudis to use in their war in Yemen, someone else will, the Russians. Now you could make an argument about with more than that, if you're just saying, well, it's okay to do, or if I don't do it, other people will do it, so I might as well do it, that would still be bad logic. It doesn't follow that it's true or good. It may turn out that it is true or good, but it doesn't follow that it is. I mean, for example, if someone says, people are commonly not murdering each other, therefore not murdering people is right, well, that happens to be true, but it's not a good argument for it. Even though the not murdering people is a good thing. Now, on the side of evil, pretty easy to use. You essentially defend a practice by saying that it's commonly done. And again, psychologically, people often say, well, if it's commonly done, it's okay. Or in many cases, people will say, yeah, I want to get away with that too, so why not? So, like for example, someone saying, well, yeah, it's okay to cheat a little on your taxes, everyone's doing it. And people probably think, why should I be honest on my taxes if everyone's doing it? Because I'm getting screwed and everyone else is getting away with it. And so psychologically it can be very, very appealing. But again, logically is no support there. Now, there is, of course, potential exception. And it's a more of a philosophical exception. In ethics is a view called relativism. It's a view that the culture or the group determines ethics. So, if your culture does it, then, and relativism is true, then this is good logic. Now again, since it's a matter of controversy, we don't know if relativism is true, we don't know if objectivism is true. I wouldn't use that as an example because the answer would be, well, it all depends on what moral theory has got it correct, we don't know what that is, so it's a problem. But in cases where something being commonly done does make it good, which is ethical relativism, then it wouldn't be a fallacy. But that won't show up on the quiz or exams or assignments because that's a unsettled matter. So, on the side of good, the defense is this. It's to ask the obvious question. If it's true that everyone or most people do this, that it's commonly done, is there any other reason? If the answer is no, all the person is saying it's commonly done so it's good, then that would be bad logic. Now again, they could still be right. Something could be commonly done, and they could be right, it's a good thing. Like if someone says, giving to charity is commonly done. Giving to charity is good. Well, the conclusion is true, giving to charity is good, but the logic is terrible. Now, here's the other exception. Now, there are things that look like a possible appeal to common practice that are not, or that is not. And that is this. It's the request for fair play or consistent treatment. And here's the idea. There's a moral principle, also occurs hopefully in the law, that standards, rules, practices, procedures must be applied consistently to everyone. And the only thing that justifies an exception, a difference, is what's called the principle of relevant difference. And it's a moral principle. The idea is that, again, if you have a rule, policy, procedure, etc., you have to treat, the sake of the case of people, you have to treat people the same unless you have some difference that justifies a different treatment. Otherwise, it's unwarranted. Now, it's also supposed to apply, to law, at least if you have a moral basis to law. So the idea is the law is supposed to apply consistently to everyone, and if there's going to be an exception, there has to be a justifying relevant difference. Now, as you might imagine, there's debate about whether this should be a thing or not, and there are huge debates about what counts as a relevant difference or not. But we'll use a pretty non-controversial example. Suppose you work someplace and you have like a part-time job now, and people show up late, a little late to work all the time, and nothing nothing happens. It's like, okay, sometimes things happen, people get late, and then you show up like 2 minutes late and you're immediately fired. And you say, hey, no one else ever gets fired for being late even though they're late all the time. This is unfair. Now, would that be a fallacy? Would that be common practice? No, because you're not saying everyone does it, so it's okay. You're saying I should be treated the same way as everyone else. If other people are not fired for being late, then unless there's a relevant difference, then I shouldn't be fired. Now, if the manager says, I'm really sorry, but corporate called up and told me that we have to institute this, if you're a minute late, you're fired policy, it just came in, literally just came into the email, 30 seconds ago, sorry about that. Well, that would now be a relevant difference. If before is like no big deal, and suddenly it's corporate policy, that would be a relevant difference. It would suck, but it would be a relevant difference. Other examples, well, going back to pay. If, suppose you're at a company and you find out like other people's salaries, and you find out that other people who have the same experience, education, etc. as you are making more, and they're all guys and you're a woman. And you say, hey, I should get the same wage because I'm doing the same work, same education, same experience. Well, that wouldn't be appeal to common practice. That would be, I'm doing the same work and I should get the same pay. Now, if someone had less experience and they were paid less or did less work, those would be relevant differences. So if someone says, hey, I worked 10 hours less than Sally and I got paid for 10 hours less, that's so unfair. Well, no, that's fair. 10 hours less of work, that would be a relevant difference. Okay, so that's the appeal to common practice. Main things about it, again, definition, idea is that something's supposed to be good or right or correct because it's commonly done, and it's bad logic because just because it's done a bunch doesn't make it good, bad, or correct. The defense against it is to say, well, is there any other reason being offered aside from it's commonly done? If the answer is no, it would be a fallacy. And the exceptions would be request for fair play. And again, the difference there is what a person's saying is, I want things to be done consistently, not, it's commonly done, so I should be allowed to do it too. It's, here's how things are done, and I should be treated the same way as others. And that, it seems like a subtle difference, but it's important one. Before going to our last of this family of appeals, anything about common practice that needs more common or practice? Argument from tradition, also known as appeal to tradition. Now, this is similar to the first two and can look very much the same. In fact, in a way, it's like taking the first two and adding the tradition part. But here's how it goes. So the idea is something is a tradition, and it's often phrased as has always been believed, like we've always believed, or has always been done. We've always done this. So that's why it can look very much like an appeal to belief or appeal to common practice, because it can involve we believe this or we do this. What makes it appeal to tradition is that the appeal is not just to we believe it and not to we've done it. It's that the traditional part, that it's always been done, or been done a really long time, that it's a tradition. And so the fuel behind this can be essentially three things. One is there can be an appeal to belief stuck in there as well. They can also be appeal to common practice stuck in there as well. What makes it appeal to tradition is that part about the tradition, that there's an historical appeal, that this has long been believed or long been done, or always been done, since the beginning of time, that sort of stuff. So psychologically, the feel behind it is always, this is something that's been around a long time, therefore it's true, good, or correct. And again, people often say that in addition to it's been around a long time, that we've always believed it, or we've always done it, or all of them. We've always believed and we've always done this forever, since before the beginning of time. And of course it's bad logic, because just because something's been believed or done a long time doesn't mean it's true or right. It just means it's been around a long time. Yeah, I mean, take murder. Murder's been around a really long time. And it'd be weird for, you can imagine a murderer, lawyer get up in class and saying, my client should not be charged with a crime, for is there nothing older than murder? Oh, it goes back to the biblical days when Cain slew Abel. So murder is a long-standing tradition. Therefore, murder is good. My client, far from being punished, should be awarded for living up to these long-standing traditions in our community of murder. And of course, that's crazy. Now, it can be quite effective, though, not in the case of murder, typically. But when people are defending things they believe now, it's common for people to believe it is tradition and then argue that, or contend that, therefore it's true and good. Now, in many cases, they can be completely wrong about it actually being that way. So they can make not only a fallacy, it's always been like this, so it's true, they can also be factually wrong. They can just be mistaken about the tradition. And a good example of this is when same-sex marriage was a matter of debate. People would say marriage has always been between a man and a woman, therefore same-sex marriage is wrong. And that makes two mistakes. One is, of course, if you look at the history of marriage, modern marriage is modern. If you go back even a few decades, marriage was very different. If you want to go back historically, the Middle Ages, basically women were property, essentially. So traditional marriages, women are property, and you exchange them for political alliances or cattle or something. And that's traditional marriage. So traditional marriage would be the father trading their daughter for, I guess today it'd be like, house or stock, in Facebook or something. I'll exchange my daughter for this many stocks of Facebooks. Yeah, so in many cases people are wrong about the traditions, but even if they were right, the fact that it's been done a long time doesn't make it true or good. Now, it doesn't mean that it's therefore bad. So if someone says marriage has always been between a man and a woman, therefore same-sex marriage is wrong, well, they could be right. Maybe same-sex marriage is wrong. But this argument wouldn't prove it. Because again, someone could have a bad argument with a true conclusion. Like, for example, some may say, Christmas is a long-standing tradition, therefore Christmas is good. Well, that conclusion is probably true. I like Christmas. People giving me gifts. I am for that. Of course, I have to give gifts to other people, but that's cool too, because they apparently you get more enjoyment out of giving stuff to people than getting it. So you get to enjoy like all of it, plus food. So that's true, but not because of this bad reason. Now, again, psychologically, people tend to think that, since it's been around for a while, it's got to be good. Or people just like traditions. They kind of feel that, this is how we should do stuff because we've always done it. But again, logically, it's no justification. Now, again, it's no mark against something. If something's a tradition, it doesn't mean that it's therefore bad. It just means it's a tradition. It doesn't make it good or bad. So the defense is not to say no traditions, because that would be terrible, but to say, well, the person's claiming this is something we've always believed or always done. If that's true, do they have any other reasons? Now, if something in fact is true or good, there should be other reasons for it. So if something is a tradition for good reasons, backing it up, like we've done it for a long time and there's good reasons for it, then use those reasons. For example, if you take like a traditional method of brewing beer, and someone says, well, it's tradition, so it's good, well, that'd be a fallacy. But if someone says, the reason this method works is because of, all these factors that produce a really good beer, then that's a good argument. It's basically saying, this is a good method of making beer, and you want good beer, so you should use this method. That's fine. But it's simply saying, we've always brewed the beer this way, therefore this is the right way to do it, doesn't follow. So if something is a tradition for good reasons, then just use those reasons. So back when people were fighting about same-sex marriage, my response always was, if there are good reasons to not have same-sex marriage, just give those reasons. Don't appeal to tradition, because that's a fallacy. Now, one last thing for the argument from tradition. Everyone's heard of the test of time. The idea being that if something's been around a long time, it's got to be something good, because it has survived. Now, this all depends on what we mean by the test of time. If there's an actual proper testing process, like it has been subject to evaluation and found to be good, then in a way it's not really the test of time, it's a test of assessment and finding it to be good. Now, so if someone means shorthand by test of time, yes, we've assessed this, we have reasons for it, and it's a good thing, that's fine, that's not a mistake. For example, again, if you have someone who brews their own beer, and they use a particular, mixture of hops and water and process, and you say, why do you do it that way? And they say, it stood the test of time, by which I mean, when I do this, I always get good beer. And you'd say, that's a good reason to do that, because the objective is good beer, not bad beer or, poison. Similarly, if you have like a running or tennis coach, you say, well, why do you use this particular strength training method? And they say, well, I've been doing this over the course of 20 years. I've worked with over 1,000 athletes, and the injury rate among my athletes is considerably lower than the average in the sport, and they perform very well. I tried other methods, but this one has been the most effective. And yeah, that's a good reason. They're basically saying there's excellent reasons for this, and so it's good. Now, if someone just says it's been around a long time, well, really stupid things stay around a long time. Again, like murder. Murder has stood the test of time. First murder was long ago, and we're still murdering today. Theft, still around today. Hatred, racism, sexism, they're super old. They're pretty old. I wouldn't say that they're good, even though we haven't been able to get rid of them. Poverty, been around forever. I wouldn't say poverty's great, because we can't get rid of it. I would say that's a terrible thing. Similarly, things like anthrax and measles. Measles has been around a long time, but we don't say, hey, let's get some measles because it's been around a long time, because measles is terrible. You don't want that stuff. Yeah, so surviving the test of time, unless it means has been subject to actual testing, we have good reasons, doesn't mean anything. Because really terrible things can stick around a long time, like measles. Okay, before moving away from the three, anything about the three that needs more stuff? Okay, again, to sort out these, in terms of dealing with assignments, quizzes, and practicalities of real life, appeal to belief is what people think. So if someone says, yeah, we should pay our taxes, but everyone believes it's okay to cheat, so it is, appeal to belief. Common practice is what people do. So if someone says, yeah, I guess we're supposed to pay our taxes, but no one really pays all they're supposed to, so it's okay for me to cheat a little, common practice. Appeal to tradition is basically, we've done it or thought it a long time. So if someone says, yeah, we've always not paid our full amount of taxes, it's always a tradition not to do this, so it's okay, that'd be appeal to tradition. Now, tradition can be kind of tricky because it can be a reference to we've always believed it or always done it, but the thing to look for is that historical fact. So it's like everyone believes, appeal to belief. Everyone does, appeal to common practice. If it's we believed it or done it a long time, then tradition. And in terms of a practical thing, if you're not sure, if it's we believed it a long time, and an argument for tradition is the choice, that would be the preferred one. Because just like on other standardized tests, I always go with pick the best answer, and there could be better and worse ones. And that's a weasel way, it's a weasel word to avoid, those sort of problems. Okay, before rationalizing, anything else that needs stuff? Rationalizing. Rationalizing is typically self-inflicted. Although, as we'll see, a person can aid and abet others in rationalizing. And here's the idea. To rationalize is when a person presents laudable, praiseworthy, credible, good or better motivations or reasons for why they did something in place of their real reasons. So essentially what a person, to draw it out in bad cartoon style, so you get a person and they want to do or did or doing something and they want to like justify it. Now, their real motive is, we'll call that real motive M, or MR, or R, we'll call it R, for their real motive. But what they profess, what they say, is they're not real motive. We'll call that the fake motive. So they're doing something, and they say, I'm doing it because of this. When in fact, they're doing it because of this real motive. Now a good question would be, hey, isn't that just lying? Isn't the person just lying to others? And on one hand, kind of, yeah, because it is a form of deception. So what separates rationalizing from just straightforward lying? Why have a separate term for it? And why not just call that lying? Well, here's why. When someone engages in rationalization, they're not just lying. Because when a person is lying in the usual sense, they know that they're lying. So if you have someone who's doing X, and they say, I'm doing it, for this, they know their real motive. They're aware they're lying. But rationalization involves a form of self-deception. So what a person is doing, they're not just telling others that I'm doing it for this reason. Yeah, they're also telling themselves. So they have a real motive, but they're trying to deceive themselves. It may seem odd to say, how can a person deceive themselves? How can they lie to themselves? But we're all actually pretty good at this, at lying to ourselves. That we try to deceive ourselves. A good example is, something I've done. It's like, if I eat this whole cake, I'll just run some more miles tomorrow to make up for it. And that may be true, but maybe not. I might, next day I might be like, feeling fully full from that cake, I can't run all those extra miles. So we can deceive ourselves. The story we tell ourselves about why we're doing something could be not true. And on one level, we kind of know it's not true, but we tell ourselves, a different story. And if we are good at it, we can even convince ourselves that we are doing it for good reasons. So this can be tough to spot because to know someone's rationalizing, because imagine you got two scenarios where, suppose someone's, take a concrete scenario. Suppose you get a case where someone, they're talking about buying a motorcycle. Like some years back, one of my friends was talking about getting a motorcycle. Back then I knew something about motorcycles. And so he said, what kind of motorcycle should I get? And so I said, well, why are you getting one? And he said, well, gas is really expensive now, so I want to get a motorcycle to save gas money, because motorcycles are really gas efficient relative to cars. And so I said, well, if you want to get a gas efficient motorcycle, you want to get like a small one, but big enough so you can keep up with traffic. So something like a 125 would be fine, because you can go fast enough to be on the town roads, and it uses very little gas because it's pretty light, and they're also much cheaper. Now, in this case, my friend said he wanted to get like a bigger, instead of like looking at the small ones, he flipped immediately to like the really expensive sports bikes. He said, well, this is the one I want to get. Now, when he says he's getting it for the gas, here's the problem. If you're getting a motorcycle to save gas, would you buy a high-performance, save money? Would you buy a high-performance, super expensive sports bike? No, because that's not a way to save money. Now, he was convinced, he kept saying he was getting it to save money. Now, what's the difference between rationalizing and lying? Well, if he knew for sure that he was just getting it because of midlife crisis, for example, or just wanted to look cool, then he's lying. If he's just saying that to, like, you know, deceive other people. Like if he's telling like his wife, oh, I'm getting this to save money, not because of going through a midlife crisis and want to be cool, that would just be straight up lying. But if he's kind of, you know, if he seems like he's trying to convince himself, I'm getting this to save money, and he's trying to believe it, or kind of almost believes it, then there's a good chance that he's rationalizing. Now, you might not be able to tell, because, again, from the outside, you don't know what a person is thinking, so you kind of have to work out, based on what you know about them, are they rationalizing or not? Now, in this case, my guess was rationalizing, because there was no reason to lie to me about that, because I wasn't going to judge him for going through, you know, wanting a super fast, you know, cool bike to recapture his lost youth. So I'm not going to judge. And so I think he probably kind of believed it, but I also knew he was rationalizing. I was pretty sure because he was going for the super sports bike instead of the, you know, moderate price basic motorcycle. So I could see that he was trying to convince himself that that was his motivation. But since he was going for the super expensive bike, he was probably rationalizing. Now again, I can't be sure because we don't know what lies in the hearts of other people. We have to kind of go by their exterior stuff. Now what about our own case? Because this is something that's self-inflicted. How do we tell when we're rationalizing?
That's what I was
Yeah, well, here's the test. And it's basically a moral thing. Namely, how honest do you want to be? Now in the case of just straight up lying, that's basically just lying. That's morally problematic. So for example, well, take for example if someone doesn't want to go on a trip someplace. You know, they might say their reason is they need to stay home that weekend to do all kinds of work. Now, and it's a plausible reason. Like the person wasn't, like, suppose someone's in a relationship and the person in a relationship with wants to go to meet their parents, like it's a long drive. And the person says, well, I'd love to do that, but you know, I have all this work I have to do around the house and all this stuff for work, etc. Those would all be good reasons. But the question would be is that the person's real reason? And whenever we're telling our own narrative, we always want to be the hero of our own story. So we're never going to give like terrible reasons. It's like, nah, I just don't feel like being in the car and I could care less about your parents. We're not going to say that, because that would be terrible. We always try to give a narrative that sounds positive. And so the thing to do is ask ourselves, you know, are these reasons real, or am I just telling a story to myself to make myself feel better? Because if we're just outright lying, we know what we're doing. It's not rationalizing. I'm just like, oh yeah, I have all this work to do, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to be playing video games all weekend. I'm just straightforward lying. But if I'm trying to convince myself, yeah, I really have all this work to do, I really can't do this, then I'm rationalizing, because I'm trying to give myself, you know, I'm trying to basically trick myself, create a narrative in which I seem good. So why would that be a problem? Well, the main problem, of course, is that it's basically dishonest. If we do that, we're lying to two people in a sense. We're lying to people we're telling our reasons to, and we're lying to ourselves. We're not being honest about our motivations. And so there's that moral problem. And of course there's also the practical problem. You know, if we want to make good choices, we need to be honest about what actually motivates us. Because the more we deceive ourselves, the more bad choices we make. Because if there's our real self, and we're lying to ourselves all the time, we eventually lose our real self, or at least our real self is, you know, we're not living that authentic self, as philosophers like to say. We're playing a role. We're being an actor. We're someone playing ourselves in our own story, and we're being inauthentic. And of course, we can make bad choices that make us worse off. Now, in some ways, it's unavoidable. We'll all do this sometime. But the idea is to be as authentic as possible, to know why you're doing what you're doing, so you're making better choices. But yeah, it's hard, you know, because we never want to be the bad person in our own story, so we always want to give ourselves these good reasons and motivations. But it's better to be, whenever possible, honest. Doesn't mean telling everything that comes into our mind, though, that's terrible. And but not dishonest. Not saying everything that pops in your head is not being dishonest, it's just avoiding lots of trouble.
Well, when you stated that, like, when you can rationalize to get out of something, could you rationalize also to stay in something, like stay in a bad situation, like making something better than it is?
Yes, yeah, good point. Many people get trapped in like a bad relationship because what they'll do is they'll tell themselves they're staying in it for credible, laudable reasons. Like they're staying in because without them, the other person would be worse off. They would be lost. Or they're staying in it because they see themselves as sort of sacrificing themselves. You know, like, for example, if you have a couple, a person may be like really bad and treating the person badly. They might be telling themselves like, oh, the person actually does care for them, and that they're staying in it because they want to, they want to make them a better person, and that they're improving, and they need them, etc., which may not be true. So they're sort of rationalizing remaining in it. Or something like with a bad job. People will often rationalize, they're in a bad job, but they don't want to leave it in a way. And so instead of saying, yeah, it's a crappy job, and I don't want to leave it because of these reasons, they try to rationalize why they're staying there. And again, the problem with that is it's dishonest. So if a person is in a bad relationship or a bad job, and they spend their time basically lying to themselves why they should stay there, they're just going to ruin their lives. They're going to be in a terrible relationship or a terrible job, and basically complicit in their own, being trapped there. They're basically trapping themselves in a bad situation. Yeah, so if we feel bad about something, it's a good point. If we feel bad about being in a job or a relationship or something, and we're giving ourselves these reasons to stay, we should always ask, am I lying to myself? Am I trying to rationalize this terrible thing? Or are these real reasons? And people can get trapped into lots of bad stuff that way. And another part is we also want to feel like we made good choices. So to say, I made a bad choice picking this person, or a bad choice picking this job, can be unpleasant, because you have to admit you made a bad choice, that you were wrong. But the only way to get out of bad is admit, yeah, that was a bad choice. Time to go. Yeah, so rationalizing can be super dangerous. So it's good to be, for very practical reasons, to be aware of it, because you can get trapped into, as you said, an excellent point, you get trapped in bad scenarios. Now, although I've kind of cast rationalizing as kind of bad, you can also have non-selfish rationalizing, where people are actually, their motive isn't that good, but they're actually doing good stuff. It's not selfish. So, for example, imagine like I get elected, I get elected president, and so like I say I'm the education president. I'm pouring money into education. Now, I might say that I'm doing this because I care about all the students and all the good of America, and that would be a credible, a laudable motive. But maybe I'm doing it. My real motive is I'm just mad about how. Oh, also I put a lot of money into running programs. I'm also the running president, and I say really for fitness, etc. But really, I'm mad about when I was in high school how the football players got all the attention and all the track and cross country athletes, we were ignored. And so now I can finally make the football players pay and give that money to track and cross country. Oh, and I really go after the NFL, for their, I become also the concussion president. So I put the NFL in business. And I say it's because I care about the players. I care about them. But really, I'm just working through my high school, my anger from high school. Now, in that case, that's probably a good thing. Reducing concussions in the NFL, more money to education, more money to track. But if I'm just working through all my high school psychological problems, my actual motives are terrible. But of course, I'm doing good stuff for terrible reasons. So someone could be doing a lot of good stuff and not being, and have rationalization that's actually not, they're not really doing super bad stuff. So we could rationalize and do things that are good for ultimately terrible reasons. So rationalizing need not always have bad results. Now, even though rationalization is typically self-inflicted, we can also encourage others to do it. You know, if someone, and we can see like, you know, someone is trying to rationalize themselves to doing something, we may support them.
Give them
Right.
the reason.
Yeah, you know, kind of help them out. For example, I'm guilty of this myself. So some years ago, a friend of mine, it was back when Warcraft first came out, back in 2004, long ago. And it's a, you know, MMO, so you play with other people, that's the whole point. And I wanted to get one of my friends to play it, and he wanted to play it too, so he had an old kind of crap computer that couldn't run it. And he was saying, well, I need to get this like newer computer. And the reasons he gave was he can't, you know, go to his wife and say, I want to buy this expensive computer just so I can play Warcraft. He said, you know, this would be good for you because you could do like your stuff on it. And of course the kids, you know, they can do their homework and so on. And I'm like backing them up 100%. I'm like, yeah, you know, get it for the kids, for the children. And I totally know what I was doing, you know. I was feeding his rationalization because I wanted someone to play Warcraft with. And it totally worked. I felt kind of bad, but, you know, it was, 2004 was a different time. It was a different time. I did things like that I'm not proud of today. I'd still do it again though. But, you know, it need not be bad, because yeah, I mean, in a way it was kind of true, because his kids did get, you know, to use the computer, and then later they got their own computer, so they could play Warcraft too, so it worked out for everybody. So, but it was still total rationalization in that case. Yeah, so someone can encourage others to rationalize, and it need not be like evil or bad. Yeah, it could turn out to have good results, but still, unless someone's honest about it, it's still kind of a lie. So, still kind of bad. So I feel a little guilty. So that's rationalizing. Now the way to defend against this is basically, again, is authenticity. To ask yourself, but is this really why I'm doing it? And are these actual good reasons? And again, it's especially important, as you raise a very good point, in cases where you're kind of like unhappy or miserable or suffering, and if you're just kind of sticking and it's like grinding you down, to say, am I sticking with this job or this person for good reasons? Or am I lying to myself about this? And it may turn out, yeah, this job is killing me, but I have good reasons to stay here. Or yes, this is a terrible person, but I have good reasons to stay with them. But at least it's an honest assessment, making the choice, you know, honestly. Okay, before going to the next thing in our remaining minutes, anything about this stuff? It needs more stuff. Now, one classic fallacy is the two wrongs make a right, as opposed to two rights making an airplane. Sorry, terrible joke. Now, this one is kind of complicated, so I'll have to use, like, drawn stuff. So the basic idea here is that what a person essentially says is, it's okay for me to do wrong to someone else because they would do wrong to me, but they say that when doing wrong to the other person is not necessary for like self-defense. So
This sounds like one of the other things we talked about, so how do we differentiate it?
oh, the key is this. So what makes it what it is you'll have a person or a group or whatever, and they'll say it's okay for me to do, we'll call it X, this bad thing. And what they say is why is that justified? Well, here's where the fallacy occurs. They say it's okay for me to do X to this other person because they would do the same thing to me. Now, the reason why that would be bad logic is because the mere fact, even if they would do that to me, that does not justify me doing the same. Because if it's wrong for them to do it to me, it's wrong for me to do it to them. And so the problem with the logic is essentially that. The person says, they recognize that it's wrong, but they're saying it's okay for me to do because not that they did that to me, not that I need to do this to protect myself, but that they would do that to me, whether it's true or not. So what would be a concrete example, maybe to clear it up? Well, I'll use like a small everyday example. suppose, going back to the example of like the workplace, you got the group, fridge for everybody at work, and suppose, I go in and I realize, crap, I forgot my dinner for tonight. I got my night class coming up, and got to get some food so I can survive the hours of teaching. And then I see, Dr. Owens has his dinner in there, his famous jambalaya, and I'm looking around, no one's watching, and I say, well, Dr. Owens would steal my lunch, if he needed, or my dinner if he needed food, so I steal his dinner, and saying, well, it's okay for me to steal his dinner because he would steal mine, and so I eat his dinner. Now, even if it was true that he'd steal mine, if it's wrong to do, it's wrong to do. It doesn't make it right, even if he would do the same thing.
So it has to be specific in that sense to someone, because like common practice is like, okay, everybody does it.
Yeah, yes, a common practice would be, if I said, good point, if I said everyone steals people's lunches, everyone steals people's dinners, then it'd be common practice. If it's, I'm gonna steal his because he would steal mine, then it wouldn't be that it's common, it's that because he would, yeah, good.
That's what I was saying, I was like, it sounded like something before, but.
Yeah, that's a good point, because, the distinction is that, because common means that most people do it. Like, if I say, well, most people steal dinner, so it's okay, common practice. If it's that I can steal Dr. Owens because he'd steal mine, then that would be,
That makes sense.
two wrongs. Now, it can also be done on a larger scale, between like groups. We might say that it'd be okay for us, say, it's okay for us to kill terrorists without any trials, just executing them, because they would kill us without any due process. And some people made that argument, but if it's wrong to kill people, unjustly, then it's wrong for us to do that. So, but people often justify, doing bad things by that reasoning. They're bad, so we can do bad stuff too. Or like when they want to torture terrorists, they'll say, these terrorists wouldn't hesitate to kill or hurt Americans, therefore it's okay for us to torture them. But if torture is wrong, it's wrong. Now, on the side of evil, the way to use this is basically this appeal. This is, the person wants to do something wrong, like I want to steal Dr. Owens' dinner, or do something else bad, but for some reason I want to try to justify it. And so what I do is say, well, this is okay because they would do that to me too. Now, it could be tying back to rationalism. I could be rationalizing. I could be telling myself, I feel a little bad about stealing his dinner, so I say to myself, no, it's okay. He would steal mine. So then I could be trying to convince myself that it's okay because they do something bad. Or maybe someone else may catch me. It's like, oh, hi, Dean Matthews. What am I doing? I'm stealing Dr. Owens' dinner because he would surely steal mine. And so it could also be trying to convince someone else that what I'm doing is okay. Yeah, so sometimes it can be convincing oneself or trying to convince others. And again, the reason why it's, can be effective is because we generally tend to think, if someone would wrong us, we don't feel so bad about doing something wrong to them because we think they might deserve it. And of course, or when we're trying to convince others, they may think, oh yeah, that person would, like terrorists, yeah, they do bad stuff, so we can do whatever bad stuff to them. And they wouldn't feel so bad about it. But again, the reason why it's bad logic is because if it's bad to do, simply saying someone else would do it doesn't make it good. Just like if someone would commit arson, you wouldn't say, well, then burning down their house would be okay, because they're burning down someone else's house is wrong, and just burning down their house would be wrong too. Now, as you might imagine, there's some complexities here. Namely, essentially questions about punishments and preemptive strikes, etc. Now, when it comes to punishment in the standpoint of philosophy, there's basically three reasons to punish people. There's retribution, and retribution or retributivism is the Old Testament thing. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, Xbox for an Xbox. And the idea is, if someone has done something bad, you owe them bad. So if they've harmed you, like if they've killed somebody in your family, you gotta kill someone in their family. If they've stolen, your car, you gotta steal their car. And that's a moral theory. You do bad for bad. Now in this case, this isn't retribution because they haven't done anything. So it's basically, I'm gonna do it to them because they would do it to me. So even the theory of retribution doesn't justify it, because retribution is, they wronged me, they did X to me, I'm gonna do X back to them, which is a different thing. So it would not be a fallacy. It may be a moral problem, like they wrong me, I wrong them, and then we know where that goes, they just keep wronging each other. But it wouldn't be a fallacy. We also punish people in theory to rehab them, so they become better people. But in this case, we're not making them, doing bad things to them, we're not making them better, but punishing someone who's done wrong so they don't do it again, so they become a better person, wouldn't be a fallacy. But again, it's not this reasoning, it's not, I'm doing something to somebody so they become better so they don't do the bad thing they did again. Well, that's not what's going on here. We also punish people for deterrence. Namely, we punish them so they don't do it again, and they serve as a warning to others. So if we were to say, this person did X, I'm going to do something, punish them so they don't do it again, and other people don't do it again, wouldn't be this fallacy, because it would be not bad logic. I mean, it may not work, but it wouldn't be bad logic. So this system essentially is, I'm doing it to them because they might do it to me. So it doesn't involve any moral justification of punishment. Now, one thing that could be appealed to is like a preemptive strike. For example, in war, one country who suspects another country is going to attack them may hit them first, to get the shot in before they go. Now, in that case, it could be justifiable, because if you're doing something harmful in prevention or self-defense, it could be justified. For example, suppose you're the leader of a country and you see the country next door is amassing all their forces on your border, and they're going to roll over your border, and you hit them first before they get across the border. Well, in that case, wouldn't be the fallacy, because you're not saying it's okay for me to attack them because they would attack me. It's that it's okay for me to attack them because they're going to come over and kill me if I don't, which would be like self-defense. So if someone says, someone's trying to kill me, and I shot them or stopped them, wouldn't be bad logic. It may be a moral problem, but not bad logic. Okay, so next time we'll finish a bit more of the theory of retribution stuff. So have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you on the Tuesday.